Right, before we start assembling, just do a quick piece count. Make sure you've got everything you need. So we've got our 8 end pieces. There's the 3 bars to make the 2 legs and the base strut. The 4 other legs. And then the 5 pieces that will form the front and the top of the rear. At this point, if you are working with any pieces that'll be on show, you can lay them out and figure out which are the best matching, the best looking, in order to make sure that those ones line up or are put at the front. So in this case I can see a lot of graining in this piece, but not so much in these 4. So I'll probably use these 4 for the front and this one at the back. Not that there's anything wrong with this one, but these match up. So let's get cracking. We're going to build the front edge now. I've laid the face edge, the one that we want on show, down to the floor so you can see the marks on the rear. What we could do is measure these carefully and line them up, but actually it's easier just to get the pieces that are going to go in place. And then just kind of give it a tap to keep it all straight. And we're going to clamp these down and then screw in. So this is going to be the top of the planter, and what we want is to be able to put a layer of stones to make it look nice. So I've measured 50mm down, and this is my leg piece. We'll just line the leg piece up 50mm, and then we'll drill in. Because the leg pieces are all cut to length, we know that measuring 50mm down and then putting the other 2 legs on will then give us all the legs in the right places. So now all we have to do is drill into here. It'll hold these boards together and give it some strength. Just a quick note on the legs. The design is going to have 6 legs. It's partly because once it's full of plants it'll be really heavy, but also these 4 boards won't actually be joined together in a conventional sense. So actually in the centre it's likely that each board will warp slightly, and by adding a centre leg on each side you'll draw the face edges of the boards together and they should appear flat and look nice. On each back corner I'll be using the upright as the legs, but the other 1, 2, 3 and 4 will be internal, and those internal ones will help to create the joints where you can't see the screw heads and to hold all the boards nice and flat and together. Where I've got feet that are going to the floor, although we're going to protect it with metal plates, the pressure treating on the timber has far greater effect at the edges than when we saw it. We won't have any pressure treatment on the open sawn edge. So where I have a leg that's meeting the floor on the plan, I've marked out my cuts so that the original end of the piece of timber, so the one that's had the pressure treatment in the bottom of it, will be the bottom of the leg of the planter. That should give us a tiny bit more resistance to rotting than if we cut the piece in the middle and then put the piece that we cut down to be the foot, as it were. Great. This is also a good time to see why we're using 70mm long screws. Because I knew the material we'd be working with. I know that on all of the joints I can drive these screws all the way in and they won't breach the surface face of the wood we're using. Okay, good. We've got 2 legs on now. When it comes to finding the midpoint for your centre leg, remember to take your measurements from the inside of the uprights, because your actual face piece is staggered. Now what we have to do is find a way to fit the sides and the back pieces. So just mocking the end pieces in place, they're all going to stand up. Again, now is your chance to make sure you get a nice face to go outwards. So take some time, spin them around, figure out which side you want on the outside and which pieces roughly match. So my method of securing the sides on isn't super elegant. Basically I've pre-drilled some screws to the point that they're just sticking out a little bit. We'll offer the piece up and then zip it in. Now where these side screws are, there's not really enough depth there, so I've used a 10mm drill bit to drill about halfway through, and what we'll do is we'll sink these in to about there, because the whole thing is just for the garden, it doesn't need to be super amazing. Then after we've done that one, we'll do that one, and that one, etc, etc. Okay, sides are on, both sides. Overall, starting to take shape. Right, we're getting ready to attach the rear leg. First thing is to measure it to the same length as the front leg. It's going to hold the wires that the grapes will bind to. What I've then done is to mark holes for the coach screws to go into. And we'll put those in one at a time to line the blocks at the back up straight so that they look nice. I'm going to be using coach bolts, which will go through and then tighten in. To give space for the head of the coach bolt to sit recessed, I'm using a 16mm spade bit first, followed by an 8mm wood drill. That'll let the coach bolts turn freely in the leg piece and drive into the side pieces of wood. So attaching the rear leg to the sides, the first one's the most important. Line it up flush and then gradually work along and use the length of the leg to make sure each of the other surfaces is flush, moving them backwards and forwards as required. Work up and you should end up with the entire side nice and flat to the rear leg. Okay, the sides are on and tightened up. Now it's time to put in the lower rear strengthening piece. It should just go in, line up with the marks we made before, a couple of screws in, and we'll be away. And likewise the rear of the top of the trough lines up and screws in. Remember, this is a face edge one, so choose the nice side that you want to be on show. Screws in, job done. Okay, we are coming together. Here is the planter trough. We've got 6 legs and we have a crossbeam. Keep things nice and rigid when we put the wires over. Amazing. Buggers. We're now using 19 by 32mm batten. I put in some angled pieces because something I haven't shared so far is we're going to build a rabbit run into the basement of our planter. You probably won't want to do that, partly because it complicates the project quite a lot. So I've added some slanting pieces because I'm going to put a rain guide so the moisture that falls through from the planter goes off to the rear to keep the rabbits dry. But the 19 to 32s will act as the surface for our pots and other material to sit on, and we'll just zip them in place. You can see I've added one batten onto the inside, screwed in nice and tight, and together with the one at the rear, that should give us plenty of support for the containers for the plants. This is an important addition for the viewers of YouTube. Okay, I'm not super happy with the feet, but I've gone ahead with it anyway. I've used these safety plates, as we discussed before, and just hammered over one pair of the spikes. The reason for that is that I thought that they would fit nicely onto the bottom of the piece of wood, but they're actually a little bit bigger than it, but they seem to work quite well in the configuration I've done it in. Right, so the foot plates, I wasn't really happy with them as they were. The edges are slightly sharp and sticking out. They were going into the area that I want the rabbits to be able to run up and down in. So I've decided to bend them over so that they sit flush to the bottom of the leg. That should give us slightly more protection on the upside as well. So for each one, just going to bend them down, pressing them over. New feet. Right, well, it's in place. So I've added in effectively the roof to the rabbit's tunnel, which are just some old boards covered in plastic. I've laid the batten out. I'm about to nip along and just pin the batten in place. Long term I want to be able to get them out again, so if we move house we can take it with us. I think it'd be too heavy with all of the fittings in it. But we're getting there. Time for the wires. These aren't ideal because they're a bit too long, but hey ho, it's what we've got. So I've marked positions towards the front of the frame so that there's some space for the vines to grow and for air to circulate around. Just drill some pilot holes. So I recentered that one because it was a little bit off. But basically, get the screw started by hand, then use a screwdriver to help you in with the last way. And as if by magic, like that. As you drive the hooks in, remember to judge the depth properly, so that you keep your face edge and don't burst through. Right, ready for wire. Now this sort of wire can be a massive pain to work with because it's actually thick enough to be quite hard to work. It's also razor sharp, so watch your hands and wear eye protection at all times. Basically I'm going to show you a trick. So cut yourself off a piece that's significantly longer than the run you need by kind of a foot or so, and that'll allow you to tension it easily. We've got our wire just kind of loosely in place, bent around a single time. Now to get it looking nice, make yourself a sort of a handle on one end and use that to go around a few times. And what you'll find is that this is much more decorative than any other way of doing it. And just take your snips, snip off the back. Same at the other end. Yes, you waste this little piece of wire, but it's so much easier than messing around trying to do this by any other way. 3 wires done, not my greatest work, but it'll do the job. And those joints, some of them are neater than other ones. Once again, we're getting there. We're starting planting out. As you can see, I'm using individual pots in mine. Excuse the neighbours. What you could do is what we did on the tree planters, which is to line the actual planter itself with a damp-proof membrane or an old compost bag. Just make sure you've got plenty of drainage holes in the bottom. For this particular planter, what I wanted to do was be able to move it in the future. Also, these vines are a bit close together at the moment, so once they're a bit more bigger and established, we might spread them out, take a couple of out and use the space again. Also, filling this larger trough completely full of soil would take quite a long time. So yeah, we're going pots on this one, but if you wanted, line it with membrane and just fill it normally. Huzzah! It's getting late in the day, so the sun's gone round the houses. But one finished rabbit run trough planter for climbing plants. Things I'd still like to do is to create some kind of cover. I made some mounting points to hold some kind of Cotswold stone or something on the top. But overall, pretty happy with it. Now we'll just wait and see if they grow. Bunnies!